I'm Bri, a professional chef and hunter. I left my job as a culinary chef instructor to follow my passion for the outdoors. Now I'm using my talent in the kitchen to develop the most amazing wild game recipes. Join me as I travel across America to bring the wilderness to table. For the starter, I paired a beautiful light soybean salad with shredded romaine, a red wine vinaigrette. We're gonna top that with a little Grana Padano cheese and a tiny dice of red onion, just for a little kick. For the entree, I'm doing a bread crusted salmon, which is gonna act like a crouton crust on top, serving that with fingerling potatoes, a beautiful creamy Vidalia onion soubise, and pickled onions to top it all off. And for dessert, we're doing a fresh Georgia peach clafouti, and we're serving that with a creamy Chantilly cream, vanilla bean ice cream, and fresh rhubarb compote. Today I'm gonna show you how to make a delicious soybean salad with shredded romaine, a little bit of pesto, and a red wine vinaigrette. It's super easy. We're gonna start by cutting our romaine lettuce in what I call, or what chefs say, a chiffonade, which means small ribbons. We want this salad to be, the lettuce to be about a 1/4 inch thick in slices so it looks really stringy and pretty. We don't really want like big square pieces. So what we're gonna do is cut. I like romaine because you don't really have to roll it up or anything to get this chiffonade. But we're just gonna cut it in 1/4 inch slices. And see how beautiful and stringy it looks? It looks like romaine noodles. That's what we're going for in this salad. So I'm just gonna finish cutting up our romaine lettuce. I like to stop cutting my romaine about this part because then it just gets too thick and bitter and nobody likes that. So we're just gonna toss that. We're gonna put that into our bowl. Then we're gonna cut one more head of romaine lettuce in our chiffonade. Okay, and then I'm gonna stop right there. I don't want the bitter parts. We're gonna add the romaine to our bowl for our salad. Then I have some soybeans, or edamame as you might call them. You can get them in the freezer section of basically any supermarket. All I've done to these is take them from the frozen state and I've put them in boiling water for 5 minutes, drained them off, and let them cool so that they're fully cooked and not raw. Now all I'm gonna do is put them into the romaine, like this. So now we've added our soybeans to our salad, and now we're gonna chop a little red onion, not a whole lot, to go into our salad. It's gonna add that savory flair to our salad. And what we're gonna do is do a small dice. Traditionally, a small dice is a 1/4 inch. So if you can see, I've done 2 slices on my onion, and now I'm making slices throughout, and they're all a 1/2 inch, or excuse me, a 1/4 inch apart. A 1/2 inch is a medium dice. So I'm doing 1/4 inch slices to make a small dice. And now is where I'm gonna make the squares, and now I'm gonna do a 1/4 inch along this side. This is a lot more onion than I actually need, but that's okay because I'm gonna use my onions in another recipe. Now I'm gonna add, onions are to taste. I'm probably guessing that I'm going to put about a 1/4 cup of chopped onions in here. I like onions, some people don't, but that's just them. So I'm gonna actually save this for another recipe. Now the fun part begins of dressing our salad and adding all the flavor. We're gonna add a little bit of my homemade Pine Nut Pesto to it, a very versatile recipe. We're gonna add about a 1/4 cup, I would say. If you like pesto and love basil like I do, be sure to add more. Then we're gonna always season with salt and pepper. Never season your salads after. Always season your salads during when you're making them. And then if you need to adjust later, go ahead. Now I'm just gonna add a little bit of black pepper. And now, there's not a true dressing for this recipe. I like to throw in extra virgin olive oil and red wine vinegar, and it mixes with the pesto to create an amazing dressing. So I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup of extra virgin olive oil into my salad. Then I'm gonna finish that with a little red wine vinaigrette, probably about 5 tablespoons worth. And now I'm going to use my tongs to toss it all together and combine all those flavors. And then that pesto is going to mix with the virgin olive oil and the red wine vinegar and create a nice dressing for the soybeans and the romaine lettuce. Okay, that is looking beautiful. Now I'm going to taste it just to make sure our salt is where it needs to be in our seasonings. So, the salt is great, but I am going to add a little bit more black pepper. That's where you get to season to your liking. It's what at the end. But now this is a really good salad. Should do the trick. Now, to finish it off though, I'm going to add one of my most favorite ingredients in the whole wide world is cheese. I love cheese, and I will put cheese on everything. And I do put it on everything. I even put it in pastries sometimes. So I'm going to top it off with Grana Padano cheese. I have grated, which is one of my favorite cheese. If you don't know, Grana Padano cheese is a member of the Parmesan family. It's just made a little bit differently, and it's delicious. You should look into that. And I'm going to give it one last toss. And it's finished. It's that easy. Shredded soybean salad with pesto vinaigrette.
Wilderness to Table is brought to you by
Let me show you how to make a Vidalia onion soubise. What is a soubise? It's a take on the classic French mother sauce, a bechamel. And y'all have seen a bechamel in mac and cheese, right? Well, today, all we're gonna do is a simple take on a classic bechamel, and we're gonna include more onions. It's really easy, and it's sure to impress your guests. We're gonna start by slicing our onions really thin. The smell of onions just like makes me so excited, and I think it has to do growing up with my dad, and we would always make onion soup together. So this sauce is one of my favorite sauces to go to. Plus, whenever I make it, everybody's like, oh my gosh, what's the recipe? So y'all, here's the recipe. It's super easy, and you're gonna be a whiz in your kitchen after this. And what I love about a soubise is it's a great vessel for spices. You can add curry, you can add sumac, which I'm gonna do later on. You can add white pepper and have a peppered sauce. You can do so many takes on this sauce for any type of dish that you're doing. So this is a very versatile sauce. So now I'm just gonna slice my onions really thin, all at an even consistency, at about a 1/4 inch, a 1/4 to an 1/8 of an inch. When you get to the end, just slice the same width. We're gonna go in, slice these onions. I think slicing onions also reminds me of culinary school back in the day when I used to like cut so many onions and I would be crying all the time, and it wasn't because of my chef instructor. It was because of all the dang onions I had to cook, or cut, excuse me. I also had to cook a lot of onions. But anyways, so onions and I have had a love-hate relationship, but boy do I love them because they taste so good. So now we've almost got all of our onions sliced. Then I'm going to heat up my pan to about medium-high heat. Perfect. I'm going to add about 4 to 5 tablespoons of butter, but really as much butter as you like, because you can never have enough butter, right? Love some butter. Then we're going to add our onions into the butter. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. That's the sound of making your house smell really good, right? Makes you think of like Thanksgiving and stuff. Okay, now it's really important to season your onions with salt and pepper while you're cooking them. Salt will help draw out all the moisture in your onions, and the lack of moisture will help the caramelization and get them nice and brown, which is what we want. And what does caramelization mean in cooking? It means flavor. So we definitely want our onions to have flavor because they are the star of our sauce. So now we're gonna add a little pepper to our onions as well. Now we're gonna let this sit, and we're gonna stir every once in a while so nothing burns at the bottom of the pan. We're gonna mingle the butter in there, and we're gonna saute these until they're nice and I'd say golden brown, and there's no more moisture in them. So our onions have been cooking for about 15-20 minutes, and look how much they've reduced. They've gotten nice and golden brown, and if you thought 2 onions was going to be a lot, look what it turns into. So they smell amazing. I mean, is there anything better than butter and onions together? I don't think so. You don't have to even answer that because I just did for you. Now, to make our sauce complete, we are going to add heavy whipping cream. We have a little Maillard reactions going on in the pan, which is the browning of sugars, and that is intense flavor. So when I basically deglaze with my heavy whipping cream, all the goodness that was stuck to the pan is now going to be in this sauce, and that is what's going to give our sauce tremendous flavor. So never wash those off your pan. Always scrape them off. We're going to pour in our heavy cream, and now I'm going to go in and gently scrape the bottom of our pan to get all those bits released into our sauce. And then I'm gonna bring this back up to a simmer. We don't have to cook the cream and onions very long, maybe for about 3 to 4 minutes. And then our sauce will be essentially done. But to make it nice and smooth and creamy and have a really velvety texture, we're going to puree it with a hand blender. So as soon as this has a chance to heat up and mingle together, we're gonna blend it into a beautiful, buttery, creamy onion sauce. Okay, our sauce is finished. It's come up to a simmer, which is exactly what we want. I'm gonna turn off the heat, use a hand towel for my pan. I'm gonna dump everything into a bowl. This. Now I'm using a hand mixer instead of a blender because I'm going to blend my sauce while it's hot. And if y'all want to laugh, just puree your hot sauce in a blender and see what happens. But I'm going to tell you what happens. It's going to explode on you and you're going to have sauce everywhere. So y'all, when you're blending something hot, just use a hand mixer and save yourself, which is what I'm going to do today. So we're gonna pulse our sauce because we don't want it to go flying. And I'm gonna pulse it until I get the texture that I want, which is creamy. I want tiny little chunks of onion, but not too much. And voila, you have yourself a beautiful Vidalia onion soubise. Now to hold it over for your dish or your main course, I'm going to return it to the pan And I'm going to slow simmer on as low simmer as I possibly can because I still want to extract some of those flavors from the onions. And while this is simmering, I'm going to finish our meal and I'm going to get our fingerling potatoes into the oven. We're going to start with our heirloom potatoes. I like all the colors. We're going to cut them in half. You can roast them whole. I like to cut them in half because one, it decreases the cooking time, and two, you know when you eat a potato, what's your favorite part on a potato? And let's be real, it's the crunchy parts. So this is going to ensure us more crunchy parts, and that's what everybody wants. Nobody wants soggy potatoes. So now I'm just going to cut all of my potatoes in half, and then once they're all done, we're going to season them and get them into the oven. So I'm using heirloom fingerling potatoes. Heirloom simply means they came from an ancient grain that hasn't been touched, or an ancient seed for that matter, actually. That means it's not new. These potatoes have been around for a long time and have not been changed. So that is why I prefer anything heirloom. But on top of that, they always come in the most beautiful colors of purples and greens and oranges. And look at this. I mean, look how beautiful these heirloom potatoes are on the inside. You really can't beat it. And tomatoes come in heirloom. I always suggest buying heirloom tomatoes. They're tasty as well. So that's why I prefer heirloom potatoes. Now that those are done and all cut in half, I'm going to grab my cookie sheet or my baking sheet. I'm going to spread them evenly on our cooking sheet. Make sure they're not piled up like this when you cook them, because if they're piled up like this, they're going to steam and you're never going to get that crunchy, good caramelization that you want on the potatoes. So always make sure that they always have enough space, enough personal space, right? Give your potatoes some love. They need some distance. So now we got those all out on our cutting board. I'm going to drizzle them with extra virgin olive oil. Super easy. This also will help with the crust, the olive oil, on building it up. And then I'm going to sprinkle some chopped garlic in there as well. Gotta have flavor, and garlic definitely delivers the flavor. Then, wipe my hands off. We're gonna season with salt and pepper. Now, don't be afraid to season your potatoes well with salt. Potatoes can be very bland, and if you only use like a teaspoon of salt for this recipe, you're sorely missing out and your potatoes aren't gonna be well seasoned. So don't be afraid to use it. Plus the salt on these roasted potatoes when they bake creates the most beautiful crust. So I season heavily with salt on these potatoes. I am using kosher salt. It is one of my favorite salts to use. I'm also going to sprinkle black pepper on top. There we go. And we're gonna finish it with Parmesan cheese. Y'all know I like my cheese. I said I was gonna incorporate cheese in any way I could. But this Parmesan cheese also gives a good savoriness and saltiness to these potatoes, which I absolutely love. Now that we've got all of our cheese on there, I'm gonna use my tongs and gently toss them in the pan, just so that I make sure everything's coated with all the spices, all the cheese, and all the olive oil. And I'm gonna bake these in the oven at 350 degrees. And because they're so small, they're not gonna take that long. They're gonna take about 20 to 25 minutes at 350. So now, I'm gonna get these into the oven, and then we're gonna move on to our salmon. So our potatoes have been baking in the oven for about 25 minutes and they're all done. I'm gonna get them out of the oven and then we're gonna begin on our salmon. Ooh, they look so beautiful. Look at that, nice, golden and crispy, pure deliciousness. I'm just gonna let them cool off while we prepare our salmon. So I am going to prepare bread crusted salmon. It's such an easy dish and it's gonna have like a crouton crust on top of the salmon. I'm gonna start off with my brioche bread. I'm going to make about 1/8 of an inch of slice on our brioche bread, just like this. I do have some all ready for me to go. So we got our bread slices. Then I'm going to, because I don't want to have such a thick crust on my salmon of bread, I want the highlight to be the salmon. So I'm going to take my slices of brioche bread and I'm going to use a small rolling pin to roll them flat about the same thickness as a corn tortilla. I don't want my bread to be too thick. And we're going to do this for each salmon fillet. Now we're going to always season your salmon, right? You want to season before cooking, so I'm going to give them a good dash of salt and pepper before I get them on the bread. Now, I'm going to take an egg. I'm going to gently, you don't have to mix this super well. I just take my pastry brush and mix it, so it's super easy. Dirty up one less tool. I'm going to mix that. That's going to be like our glue to stick the bread to the salmon. So now, mix that just a little bit more. I'm going to gently brush the bread with my egg wash so that my salmon will stick to it. Good coating, not too much, just a little. Then I'm going to take a salmon fillet and I'm going to lay it down on the bread. Now there's excess bread right here and I'm not going to fold it, I'm actually going to cut it off. So I'm going to trim the bread to the same size as my salmon. And because I like really pretty things, I'm also going to trim the edges because I want my salmon fillets to look really pretty when they're done. Now I have this beautiful crust the same size as my salmon. And I'm just going to continue that with my other salmon fillets until they all have a nice bread crust on them. Meanwhile, while I'm doing this though, I'm also going to get my pan nice and hot. I'm going to add a little canola oil to my pan. I'm probably adding about 4 tablespoons. I kind of want to pan fry almost the crust on this salmon. I'm going to get this onto high heat. And while that is heating up, I'm going to finish my salmon by trimming off the excess bread. I'm using brioche bread for this recipe because it's so buttery and rich and luscious, just like this Alaskan salmon. I think that this Alaskan salmon is so beautiful, so I want to use ingredients that only amplify its beauty, and brioche bread does a great job at that. We want to make sure our pan is nice and hot. If I was to put my salmon into the pan when it's not hot enough, I'm not going to get that crust golden brown and crispy. It's more or less going to steam. So I really want to make sure that my pan is nice and hot before I place these salmon fillets in there. And to do this, you can always, a trick of mine is throw a little salt and see how it simmers. And you see it didn't really do much yet, so that means my pan is not hot enough. So now I'll just wait a few more seconds and bring my pan up to heat. Also, a good indication of when your oil is ready for you is it actually starts to move and create like little ripples inside the oil, and I can start seeing little ripples right now. So now when I place my salmon fillet bread side down first. You always want to sear your salmon presentation side down first because you want to get that good caramelization first. Oh yeah, perfect. You do want to cook your salmon fillets gently. Never too fast, never set at really high heat. Gentle. Be gentle with the fillets. Love on them, tender. They like slow, easy baths. So that's what they're getting right now. I'm going to caramelize the brioche slightly so it becomes crouton-like. So when you cut into that salmon, you have that good texture from the brioche being all crusty and the delicious silkiness of the salmon. I'm going to let this cook on this side for about a minute, just until that brioche starts getting golden brown. Another tip to do is when you're pan frying something like I am right now is don't touch it. Don't try to move it around. Don't try to do anything like that. It will never brown if you move it. So you always want it to stay. And eventually it will release from the pan when it's nice and brown. See how that came up beautifully? Nothing stuck to it. And look at that color. That's exactly what I was going for. That crust looks amazing. Now I'm going to cook this on this side, on the other side, for about 2 minutes. And then I'm going to get it back into the oven and we're going to cook it at 350 degrees. And really all it's going to bake for is about 6 minutes, if that. So it depends on how you like your fish, but usually I say around 6 minutes is how it's cooked through nicely. Gonna let that sear and get some color really quick before we get it in the oven. I'm just gonna check. Perfect. See how it released from the pan? That's how I know I'm getting a good crust on there. So now I know it's time to move it into the oven. Turn that off. Now I'm gonna finish it off in the oven. We're going to wait about 6 minutes for that to cook, and then we're going to put our whole dish together. So now that we finish all the components to our dish, we're going to assemble our plate. But before we do, I'm going to chop some green onions that I did a quick pickle on about 3 days ago. I love pickling green onions. They bring a brightness and acidity and that great onion flavor to a dish. They just make those little bites that you take so much more better. So we're gonna chop just a little bit because they're gonna be a garnish. We don't want to overpower our fish. Now I'm going to take our plate. I'm gonna lay down some of our sauce. Make it look really pretty. This beautiful Vidalia onion Soubise sauce that we made. I'm gonna make it look really pretty with a little swish because plating is important and we eat with our eyes. Then I'm going to take our roasted fingerling potatoes and lay some down as a little bed cushion for our beautiful salmon. We're going to get some of those down. One more. Put those there. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab our salmon. And I'm going to gently rest our fillet right on the potatoes. Then I am going to garnish it with a little spring onion that I pickled, just a little for that acidity, salty kick. Okay, and I have a little sauce. We're gonna make it all pretty. And there you have it. This salmon looks so good. I am going to dig in before I serve it. You just gotta taste test and make sure it's okay, right? Salmon is my favorite fish, so how can I pass it up? Look at this sauce and that crust, my goodness. So good. And the green onions bring like this crispy, acidic bite to it. So delicious. The salmon is perfection. Now that we finished our starter and our entree, we're going to finish our meal with a peach clafouti topped with rhubarb compote, chantilly cream, and vanilla bean ice cream. To get our peach clafouti started, first we're going to start by buttering our cast iron pans. We're also going to add some sugar to the rim of the pan as well. This butter and sugar combination will prevent the clafouti from sticking to the pan. Now, if you don't know what a clafouti is, y'all are missing out, but I'm going to fill you in right now. A clafouti is probably one of the first desserts that I learned to make in pastry school. It's a French dessert. It's really easy. It's like a one-pot wonder. Everything is made in the blender and you just pour it into the pan and bake it. But a clafouti has the texture of a custard cake. So it's like a combination of custard and cake had a baby, and their baby is named clafouti, and that's what we're making today, and it's absolutely delicious. So what I like to do is get some sugar in the pan though, and swirl it around so that all that sugar coats the pan nicely. Just dump the excess right into the next pan, swirl that around, get all the walls of the pan as well. Dump the sugar into the next one. Sprinkle that around. I need a little bit more sugar. Roll it around. We don't want the clafouti to stick. We're going to eat these right out of the pan, but we don't want them to stick. We still want you to get every single bite of all of that cakey, custard, gooey yumminess that's about to happen. Okay, so our pans are all sugared. Now we're going to start the batter. It's a really simple batter. We're going to make everything in our blender. All you have to do is add the ingredients. To make our batter, it's super easy. We're going to add everything to the blender and let the blender do the work. We're going to do a 1/4 cup of milk. We're going to have some all-purpose flour. We've got some sugar. We're going to season it with some salt. We're going to zest about 1/2 a lemon. Add that in there. Lemon zest will just brighten up that batter. We're going to add 3 eggs, whole. You don't need to whip them or anything. Just add them straight to the batter, like that. Three eggs it is on our blender. And we're going to go ahead and blend this until it all comes together. We don't want to over blend our dough or our batter, excuse me, because then it's going to become really tough and we want soft custard-like texture. Now that we have our batter all blended, we're going to add our final ingredient to our batter, which is melted butter. We're adding it last because we don't want to take a chance and cook those eggs that are in our batter. So now just a little pulse to get that all blended together. And we're finished. Texture that I'm going for, I know y'all know what like melted milkshakes look like. That's the same texture of this clafouti that we're going for. And all we're going to do is take it from the blender to our sugared pans, pour till it's about 3/4 way up to the top. There we go. Get all of our ramekins in there. And we're going to put a little bit more in this one, make it all even. There we go. Now, we're going to take our fresh Georgia peaches and we're going to lay them right in the batter. I like to make like a little flower design or something, but you can keep these rustic. And the good thing about clafoutis is you can use any fruit that's in season. Raspberries are great in here, strawberries, persimmons, you know, quince is even good. I've tried that before. Whoop. So really, this dessert you can eat all year round, depending on what flavors or fruits are available, and it's gonna work, and you're gonna have an amazing dessert, and you can throw it together in no time at all. And now we're gonna put them back on top of here. And I'm gonna get these into an oven at 350 degrees, and they're only gonna take between 20 to 25 minutes to cook. They should still be custard-like inside when they come out. So now I'm gonna get these carefully into the oven. and let those bake. So our clafoutis are all done. I'm gonna get them out of the oven so that they can cool. And we're gonna see how they came out. Look at that. So beautiful and delicious. Look at how pretty they are. So now I'm just gonna let them rest on top of my stove top so that they can cool to room temperature before we serve them. Let me show you how to make a delicious rhubarb compote. It's a great pantry staple. You can use them for savory dishes or sweet dishes. If you don't know what a compote is, it's simply fruit that's been reduced down. So a compote can be fresh fruit reduced down in a little bit of water, or it can even be dried fruit. So it's similar to a chutney, but it's almost like a medley of a chutney meets a sauce. And so a compote is gonna have chunks of fruit, but it's still gonna have this delicious, saucy element to it. So now I'm gonna show you how to make my rhubarb compote. To make my rhubarb compote, it's super easy. We're going to start with my rhubarb. We're gonna get it into the pan. We're gonna get our burner on about medium heat. We want compote to simmer. We never really wanna boil it because we don't wanna burn the natural occurring sugars and the sugars that we've added to the compote. Speaking of sugars, I'm now gonna add my sugar to it. Get all of that in there. We wanna sweeten up the tartness that rhubarb naturally has, so that's why we're adding sugar. Plus, it's gonna make it super saucy and delicious. I like to add a few spices to my compote. I prefer cinnamon because I think rhubarb and cinnamon go so well together. And ginger. It sounds a little funny, but that heat that ginger brings to rhubarb and cinnamon is just divine. It's like heaven. And now I'm gonna add a little zest from this orange. The zest is just gonna give it that hint of orange that is gonna make you go, oh wait, I think I taste a little orange in there. And sure enough, it's that little zest. But sticking with our use everything theme, we are going to slice our orange and use the juice as well. The juice is gonna help bring all that rhubarb and sugar and the cinnamon all together to form one beautiful sauce. We're gonna get that in there. Squeeze it. All that juice in there. Beautiful. Now we're gonna let our rhubarb simmer, but I just wanna give it a quick stir just to get all those spices throughout all the rhubarb and all that sugar evenly distributed. And remember, never boil your compote. We just want it to simmer and slowly bring out all those flavors. And once that rhubarb starts to cook, it's going to almost melt in a way, and it's gonna melt and create a beautiful sauce. It's gonna get really tender and delicious. So we're just gonna let that be for a second. So while my rhubarb compote is simmering, I'm gonna make some Chantilly cream. It's super easy. Don't let the fancy name fool you though. All Chantilly cream is heavy whipping cream mixed with powdered sugar. Chantilly cream generally doesn't have vanilla extract, but if you like it, you can always add it. I like the natural flavor of the whipping cream and sugar together, but all we're gonna do is whip the heavy whipping cream to stiff peaks, and that's it. You have Chantilly cream. So there you go. Our Chantilly cream is nice, soft peaks, but I'm gonna give you a little tip right now, and y'all are gonna really love this one. We've all done it. We've all over whipped our cream, right? Don't throw it away. You can save it. If for some reason you've just got blender happy and your cream has separated a little bit, add about 2 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream to the over whipped cream and gently fold it in, and that will save your whipped cream. Our rhubarb compote has now simmered for about 25 minutes, and this is exactly what the texture should look like. Nice and thick and fruity and beautiful. Now, at this point, it is ready to serve. And the good thing is you can serve it hot or cold. All the components to our clafoutis have now cooled and we have everything built. So now I'm going to show you how I like to assemble my dessert. I'm going to take my individual clafoutis and I'm going to spoon some beautiful rhubarb compote all over it. I'm going to keep my compote warm because my clafouti is warm and I don't want to add any other cold element besides the ice cream. Ice cream is always good, and we don't want to take away from that. So I'm going to spoon a little bit of that on. Then I'm going to take my vanilla bean ice cream, do a good helping because we all want a good amount of ice cream, right on top of that compote. And then, because no dessert is complete without Chantilly cream, we're going to do a nice dollop of Chantilly cream. And there you go. You have my peach clafouti with rhubarb compote, Chantilly cream, and vanilla bean ice cream. Thanks for watching Wilderness to Table. Come back next time for more wild recipes.